So, this is in addition to a series of interviews that I've been doing kind of once a month, or trying to do once a month, with my friend Chris Nightengale, who is also shooting this, in lieu of interviewing somebody else for the month of October. I decided that I wanted to record myself telling the story of my late son, Harrison, who would have been 7 years old this year. But he passed away on October 31st of 2018. I've been intending to tell this story for the last 7 years, and I very much love the number 7. I very much hold on to it as a number of completion. I love its frequency and importance in the Bible. And I've been attending therapy sessions with EMDR and have been very diligent about trying to delve into this trauma around my son passing away. And so, full disclosure, I overthink and I over-explain. And, originally I was going to try and wear makeup and get my hair done and look really put together. But the fact of the matter is that I couldn't be farther from put together. And the fact that I have clothes on and have left the house is a pretty large achievement for me. I believe in t-shirt and clothing magic, and so I've got my empath shirt for my brother Ulysses, one of my best friends, and I also have my Public and Quality Meats hoodie on, which is my home away from home, and I also have my leather jacket on. I wanted to portray myself as being a mess, because I'm very much a mess right now, and it's by the grace of God and by my good friends who have been checking on me and being super patient with me about not getting back to them right away, and people looking after me and keeping me fed and cared for. I feel like I'm falling apart, but I'm also being held together. I feel very blessed. I have my phone nearby to look at pictures, kind of jog my memory of Harrison's story. When I had this project in mind for this instance in particular, I wanted to sort of record myself as though I was talking to Harrison. And when I started typing it out earlier this week, I had this really interesting feeling of really feeling like a mom. I had interviewed my mom earlier this year and wanted to know more about her around, the story of my being born. And I enjoyed being able to tell Harrison his story, So anyway, my dad passes away by suicide. His best friend would argue with me, but I'm convinced my dad passed away by suicide in September of 2016. And I resolved to get married. I didn't know that you shouldn't make really heavy life decisions in the midst of really heavy grief. It was my first instance of really heavy grief. And so I get married to Eric. And that was in 2017. And neither of us really expected that we would be able to get pregnant. I have polycystic ovarian syndrome, and Harrison's dad was older, and we were both huge potheads. And I feel like I'm not saying anything that people don't already know. And Eric, if you see this, we can talk about it. But yeah, neither of us were really expecting me to get pregnant. And there was this week that I could not stop throwing up, like for over a week. And I thought I just had like really bad food poisoning. And it was actually later on that your uncle Ulysses uh, figured out that I was pregnant because of how much I was throwing up. And it wasn't until I went to the hospital and they gave me a pregnancy test that they let me know that I was pregnant with you. And oh, also, full disclosure, I'm exhausted. I'm so tired. And God has a really interesting sense of humor because the week that I'm mourning my child's death is also like I have my period. And so everything is just so much bigger and exacerbated. And so I'm going to be probably crying a lot. But your dad and I were elated to find out that I was pregnant. And I remember that there was this picture that I took of me wearing a like black and gray plaid shirt, and I'm looking at myself in the mirror and smiling. And it was right before we went to the 20-week checkup, and my belly was showing, and I was just so excited to be pregnant. And then we went to the 20-week checkup, and you were perfectly healthy. And you had all your fingers and toes, and everything looked good. And the nurse who was doing the exam, I remember all of a sudden her face was went white. And she got really quiet, and she said that she had to go find a doctor. And of course, your dad and I started kind of freaking out because we knew it wasn't good. And what basically was determined was I had what was called an incompetent cervix, which is a horrendous name for a female body part in any way. But what it basically entailed was at 20 weeks, which is halfway through a pregnancy of 40 weeks, ideally, your cervix is at the bottom of the uterus, and it's supposed to be like super thick and like not dilated at all. And mine was already beginning to like get really thin and already beginning to dilate. And so they rushed me over to the hospital across the street, which at the time we were living in West Des Moines. So we went to Mercy Hospital in Des Moines. And they let me know that they would have to do an emergency cerclage, which is basically sewing up my cervix. And because you were already pressed, I'm still getting used to just like talking to Harrison, but I think it's the right way to go about this. Because you were already like pressed up against my cervix, it was like a super dangerous, risky surgery, and the surgeon let me know that it was like going to be super risky. They also let me know that if I had gone to get checked out a week earlier, they wouldn't have caught it. And if I had gone a week later, I would have miscarried. So it was like literally the perfect time to see what was going on. And so they did this, they decided to do the surgery. And before They had me go under. The doctor asked if we had decided on your name. And I told him it was Harrison. And Harrison had been decided when I was 14 years old. And I read Harrison Bergeron by Kurt Vonnegut. And it's such a beautiful, such a fucked up story. And the main character is so amazing. And it's such a tragic, tragic story. And I love it so much. And I decided when I was 14 years old that if I were ever going to have a son, that I would name him Harrison. And like the similarities between my son and the character are like pretty uncanny, I think is the right term. So, and also like Eric tacked on Harrison Ford because he was like a huge Star Wars fan, and I agreed, whatever, but it was going to be Harrison. And anyway, so I have this surgery and they put me on immediate bed rest. I'm like not allowed to work anymore. I'm stuck at home. I come home and I start cleaning things, and Eric yells at me for starting to clean things and gets me into a couch. And I didn't know, I'd never been laid up like that before, and I didn't know how to rest. And the only time I leave the house for 4 weeks is to go to my OBGYN's office, where they are giving me like hormone shots in my butt that are very painful. The shots are like $900 each. My insurance through work doesn't cover it. So people at the office are basically like finding samples and like just scrounging for these shots and doing everything in their power to like help me stay pregnant. They were so kind. They were so kind. And we did that for about a month until I was at my checkup for 24 weeks. And they did the, like, I want to say echolocation. That's not it. And it's not an ultrasound either, but it was like being able to hear your heartbeat to make sure it was good. It was always such a relief to hear your heartbeat. And at 24 weeks, I sat up and my water broke. And I thought, this was my first pregnancy, so I didn't know what any of this was or what was going on. And I thought I had peed myself. And I just remember looking around at women around me and them looking so concerned, as everyone knew that it was like the clock started ticking now, because the key was to help keep me pregnant. And the longer that you were in me, the longer you could continue to grow and develop and be okay. And the moment my water broke, they essentially were waiting for me to develop an infection. So once that happened, they rushed me over to Des Moines Hospital, the Mercy Hospital across the street. And it, poor thing, it was the same nurse again who dealt with this as the one who found out that my cervix was incompetent. Poor woman. It was the same one who dealt with both situations. I felt so bad for her. But I was in a hospital room for 2 weeks. I made your dad's life a living hell. I didn't know where he was. I was like going crazy because I'd never been in a hospital really, and all of a sudden I was like locked in this hospital and couldn't really move and couldn't walk around, and I was there was a heart monitor that was strapped up to me 24/7 to make sure that you were okay. And the goal was to hit 26 weeks because anything younger than that was like far less viable for you to be able to survive. So I prayed. We were in a Catholic hospital, and I would go to the chapel and I would pray in the chapel. And I didn't know how to be Catholic, but I grew up around Italians and Mexican families in Cicero. And so I like pretended to be a Catholic, but I prayed a lot. And I referred to the Catholic magic. And I watched a lot of Ghost Adventures. This is where my obsession with Ghost Adventures began because I had nothing to do, and the Travel Channel was always playing Ghost Adventures. And so this is where, yeah, I developed my slight obsession with Zach Bagans and Ghost Adventures. But it became a comfort show for sure. And like I very much connect my time with like being in the hospital with Harrison, with you, in Ghost Adventures. Um, so on the day of 26 weeks, I feel this weird pain in my back, and all of a sudden I'm like in labor, and I remember like all of a sudden there's just like this excruciating pain going on. And I remember talking to Eric and letting him know that like I was starting to feel sore, and like but he had time. You think he was like running an errand or something, and then like I called him back, or a nurse called him back maybe a few minutes later and like told him that he needed to get there. And all of a sudden there were like nurses that were like strapping my arms down and like trying to put IVs in both of my arms, and the doctor's like asking, Mrs. Cook, like, how are you feeling right now? What is your pain at? And I feel like I was like doing like a Linda Blair in The Exorcist, so like just making noises. And I feel like labor's already really, really intense, but because they were basically just like waiting for my uterus and womb to get infected. It sounds so gross and metal, sorry. But it was just like this fine balance of trying to keep you in me and keep me from getting like a full-blown infection. And it's like as soon as that collided, they had to get you out of me, and that was like on day 26. And so they sent me into like an emergency surgery, and I remember they like shaved me, and I was so sensitive and so in pain that I like yelled at the woman shaving me. And I remember like them putting the mask on my face and going to sleep. And Eric was like super freaked out. He told me later on, because it seemed like it was just such a like life or death thing. And they cut me open so quickly, they hacked me open, that you actually had a little cut. I forget which leg it's on. Shame on me. I'd have to look at a picture, but you have a little cut on one of your legs, and you have a little scar on one of your legs from where they cut me open. And you were 2 pounds and 1 ounce, and you were born at 9:42 a.m. on February 1st. So it was 2121 and 42 a.m. I don't know what the significance of those numbers are necessarily. I do really appreciate that you were born the day before my birthday. that you didn't quite steal my thunder for my birthday, that you already understood I have a weird attachment to my birthday from my messed up childhood. But you were absolutely the best birthday present I've ever received. You're my 29th birthday present. And I remember being super drugged up and being wheeled down in a wheelchair. And you were like in one of those little space bubbles that you see in the movies. And you never think that your own kid is ever going to be in one. And you were so tiny. And you had a mask over your face and they had a blue light on you. I think to like balance out something to like, because you were going to have jaundice or something. I don't remember exactly. But you were like so tiny. And I couldn't believe that you were there. It didn't seem real. And I'm conflating both memories because I was so drugged up I could barely like stand up enough to like peer into the little bubble you were in. And then the next day was my birthday, and they had made this, the nurses had made this beautiful artwork that I still have. I've hung on to over all the moves and the years of your little feet. They were so small, and it said, "Happy birthday, Mama." And that's where everything began. And the nurses tried to explain to us that what we were going to encounter, and they tried to get us prepared, and we had no idea what was going to happen. I'm going to take a moment. So you were in the NICU for just shy of 9 months. You never made it out of the NICU. Um, it was the hardest time of my life. And, you know, I don't want to speak ill of your father because nobody, gosh, I like feel like my dad right now or my mom. Like I feel very much like your parent. It's cool. It's very healing. Um, I feel very 36 going on 37. I'm also a little high, Harrison. I'll be honest. Um, I don't want to speak ill of your father because I don't think, neither of us really knew what we were going to be encountering. And I don't think there's nothing that can prepare you for what we went through. But that being said, I needed more support from your dad than I was given. And he had a really difficult time with being able to visit you in the hospital. He did when he could, but it was really hard for him. And you consistently had a really hard time breathing. I have videos of you where we heard you cry for the first time. We heard your voice because they had taken your tube out because you had been intubated. And they were trying to see if you could start breathing without the tube. And so they put like this weird like head gear on you for a while, and you hated it, and you were always so pissed, and they had you drugged up on Ativan all the time. And there were so many times when I was there and you got really upset and you got worked up. And I couldn't help you. And you'd have to be what they would call bagged, where your oxygen would get so low that they would have to do like the emergency bagged oxygen on you. And there were so many times that I thought I was going to lose you. And watched you do that over and over again. There was a time that I was holding you and you were super tiny. I didn't get to hold you for 13 days. But it's why the 13th of the month is like an auspicious day for me. It started with me being able to hold you on the 13th of February. But I remember you had one nurse who like scolded me because your head kind of like went on my shoulder, and you were so delicate and you were so tiny, and it was so scary to interact with you. And I couldn't be a normal mom. But they, tried to help me like change your diaper and like suck on little Q-tips with breast milk. It was so bizarre. But they kept trying to do different kinds of oxygen methods for you, and none of them worked. And finally, when you were about 6 months old, they decided that they were going to give you a trach. And so you had a major surgery. At this point, I think you'd already had some kind of eye surgery, because all of the oxygen causes neonatal retinopathy. I think you'd already had an eye surgery. I don't remember the order. And then your hearing had already started going because of all of the alarms. And all of these things were told to us that were, going to be your normal. And anyway, so you got a trach. And because of that, you also got a G tube. And for the first time, though, I could see your face. You were so beautiful. And you had super chubby cheeks. And you looked really Asian. You were an eighth Japanese because of your dad. And your grandfather would swear, your grandfather would swear that you were also part Japanese on our side, even though there's actually no Japanese blood on the Manning side. But you did resemble your grandfather, especially when you were angry. I actually found out that I was pregnant with you on his birthday. What would have been his birthday the year after he committed suicide. So weird. No coincidences. But anyhow, so you have a trach, you have a G tube that goes on. Your lungs keep not developing, and they can't figure out why. And there's such an irony about the fact that your dad and I are both smokers, and I continue to be a smoker. And I'll probably bring that up later on. But your lungs could not develop. They would not develop. And I would come and visit you, and I would read to you, and I would show you. We read a Francis Bacon book, one of my favorite artists. And I would show you his paintings. And I played a Tool song for you. And your dad would read his favorite books to you. And your aunt would come visit you, and my friends would come visit you. And your uncle Ulysses visited, and your grandma Kathy. And you had so many people that were rooting for you. And so many nurses were so in love with you. They'd call you Harry, and I hated it. Ugh, I hated them calling you Harry. But they were taking care of you more than than I was. So I couldn't hold it against them. But because your lungs couldn't develop, you kept having to be bagged. And I remember being there one of the times and looking at one of your nurses and telling her, like, that can't be good for his brain. And I can't remember what she said, but I know it wasn't a good response. And so in September, like mid-September, maybe the 21st, 22nd, around then, you have this really, really bad seizure. And you are seizing so badly for like half an hour. And I get a phone call, and I'm at work at the time. I'm taking care of ladies in their home with intellectual disabilities. And I have to get somebody to relieve me and drive out to the hospital. And your dad meets me in the hallway, and he lets me know that they have sedated you so heavily that you look like you're dead. And he tries to give me a heads up. And I walk into the room, and you do look like you're dead. And you're not moving. Oh, and you have no color. And I remember your doctor like is in the room, and I'm washing my hands, and I tell him to not sugarcoat anything. I think is what that time. I don't know. Everything kind of runs together, but I'm pretty sure it was that time. And so they basically tell us that they can sedate you, and they're like monitoring your brain, but that they've done everything they can do, and that you're going to have to be transferred to Omaha Children's Hospital because like they've done everything they can do for you. And so I drive to Omaha ahead of you and your dad, and your uncle Ulysses has a show with his band Contra in Omaha that night, and I decide to go, and your dad and I got into a big fight because I was like offering for the band to like crash at the hotel room so they didn't have to like stay in the van, and was hanging out with them, and like was enjoying my brother's company and like the band's company because they're all an amazing group of guys I've known a long time. And yeah, we got in such a big fight about that because I guess I wasn't allowed to like have any kind of enjoyment with the situation going on. I don't know. But anyway, you come out to Omaha, and we get settled. We're at like a Ronald McDonald room nearby for free. I forget how many days go by, but we end up seeing a pediatric neurologist. And he's this older guy. He's probably like in his 70s. And he has like, bald on top with like fluffy hair, white hair, and glasses. And he sits us down, and he has what I think is an MRI. I don't remember what the actual scan is called. But it's a brain scan. And it's a picture of your brain. And in the center of it is just this black void. And it's burned into my memory. And the second it flashed up, and I registered what I was looking at, I thought that's not good, which is an understatement, obviously. And the neurologist explained to us that your brain had atrophied. that the repeated lack of oxygen over the span of your life had caused your brain to atrophy. And I'd already noticed your eyes had started rolling back, where you were having trouble focusing on things, and your ability to breathe, you were suddenly regressing, where your dependence on the ventilator had increased. And it's very likely that the part of your brain that was controlling like these involuntary like motor things had atrophied. And the doctor let us know that he used the word vegetable, that you would be a vegetable, that you would have severe cerebral palsy, that you wouldn't be able to walk or talk or feed yourself. And, I had been working with adults with intellectual disabilities, as I mentioned, for like 3 years, and with different levels of acuity. And respectfully, there was no way in hell, personally, that I was going to allow my own child to be what I felt would be locked in his body. And it was in that moment I kept to myself, but I made the like easiest and most difficult decision I've ever made in my life, which was I was not gonna keep him on support. And I kept that to myself. And I don't remember what Eric and I did after that, but the next thing I remember is eventually, probably a few days later, I didn't talk to him about any of this. I decided that I wanted to do it with his team because I didn't know how he was going to respond with your care team. And every day we would meet about what your status was, and, your just vitals, and what your care plan was going to be. And I brought up the option of taking you off of support, and your dad flipped out and he stormed out of the room. And I think this is when I followed him, and I don't remember exactly what happened, but I don't know, we got into some kind of argument because he was flipping out because of what I said about even just the idea of taking you off of support. And he claims that at some point that I had pushed him, or like shoved shoved him or something. Sorry about that. That I had shoved him, and like went on to like spread these rumors about me being like a domestic abuser, which I could very much say about him that would be the case. Um, I digress. It was a very difficult time, and Eric and I were both incredibly angry and incredibly hurt. And our child was sick, and we didn't know how to handle it. Neither of us had been in this situation before, and we were both crumbling. And we were also still trying to work and like keep our bills paid. And I'm very grateful to my friend Ray, who like moved out to Iowa and stayed with us and like helped keep food on our table, and like help keep me sane. But anyway, I brought that up, and then we argued about it for a while. And at some point, I don't remember what the exact order was, but like we went back to Des Moines. We went home to West Des Moines for a week. And part of me really regrets doing that because it was a week I lost with my son. But it was also like I needed some rest. And I needed to. I keep going in and out of whether I'm talking to Harrison or not. That's okay. I don't think anyone will mind. I needed a week of rest. You know, like your dad and I were just going full tilt since I was still like since I was pregnant and we found out that like something was wrong and had been running on fumes and drinking a lot and smoking a lot and chain smoking cigarettes and not eating properly and not connecting and not supporting each other. And it was just a lot. And so we went home for a week. I decided to get bangs, which is a huge indication of how well I was doing. I decided to get bangs. And on October 31st is when I had decided that we were going to take you off of support. And they had talked to us about what that was going to look like. You had a ventilator and you had a tube that was hooked up to your throat. And when we were ready, they were going to remove it and kill the alarm and allow you to pass without the assistance of a ventilator. And so we were there on the 31st for a few hours. And there's like this really funny. So every year on your death anniversary, I will have somebody, usually a friend of mine will pick them up. This year it's Karina. We'll pick up a pack of Nutter Butters and a pack of Oreos. And in the NICU, they had this cart that was in the shape of a house, and it was probably like 6 feet tall. And it had coloring books, and it had, you know, snacks and crayons and stuffed animals and all kinds of different things. And it was just like very, very apparent. It was like so your kid is about to die cart. And they just rolled this cart in. And your dad and I are hanging out with you, and you're on my lap. And you're like so roly poly. I don't know. I think you were like retaining a lot of water or something. You were like roly poly, big boy. You were a day shy of 9 months. And your dad unwrapped a pack of Nutter Butters and a pack of Oreos, and you had never really tasted anything other than like breast milk super briefly when you were super little. But then you had the trach put in, and so like everything they were giving you was through your G tube. And so your dad had scraped off some of the filling from the Oreo and then some of the filling from the Nutter Butter and put it on the roof of your mouth. And I remember your eyes lighting up, and you were so stoked, and you discovered sugar. And so that's why every year I try and have something, because it's like it's a commemorative meal. It's the closest thing I'll ever have to having a meal for you or with you. And we took pictures with you and we cried a bunch, and you had this silly orange beanie. And it was like late at night, I think it was 10 something. I chose the 31st because of Samhain, right? Halloween. When like the veil, being the creepy lady that I am, when the veil was super thin, and you know, Dia de los Muertos. I forget who it was. I feel like it was Ray. It was like, why would you ruin Halloween for yourself? But I'm working on it. I'm working on celebrating more, Harrison. I went to Six Flags with Ulysses and Gabby and Yuli's wife. So when we decided we were ready, the doctor came in and I was holding you, and I was looking down at you. And this is something I've been working on in therapy, and this is a very, very particular memory. So bear with me as I say it. But they unplugged your tube, and I was holding you, and I was watching you go blue as you were losing air. And the weirdest thing happened because your little mouth opened. And it was almost like there was some, like there should have been a death rattle, but like it wouldn't make sense because you weren't breathing and like you could only breathe with a ventilator. And I would like to think in my grief stricken mind or my woo woo loving person mind that was your spirit leaving your body. But I held you for a while until you passed. And your dad was over here on my side. And we cried and cried. And eventually I handed you over to the nurse. And your dad and I went to the car and cried some more and eventually went home. And I don't really remember the days after that. You were cremated. We had a service for you. I can't remember the day of the service, but so many people showed up. You had so many nurses that really, really cared about you, that cried a lot and wanted to let me know how much you meant to them. And I had people who I had thought I was just acquainted with through work or the art community that I'd weaseled my way into. They all showed up. Your dad's family and friends showed up. Your sisters. And I had somehow became acquainted with somebody who dressed up as Spider-Man and went to like kids' parties and had like a crew of performers. And I surprised your dad with people in cosplay and as stormtroopers because your dad was super into Star Wars. We made you be super into Star Wars. And we kept saying never tell us the odds, and I don't know. I would like to think you would have liked something else, but like it worked at the time and it was very fitting and with your name being Harrison and whatnot. But anyway, your dad really loved it because stormtroopers showed up to your service. And I don't really remember what I said. I thought it was recorded. I don't know if I can find it. I don't know if I want to. I shaved my head and it was out of mourning. I did record myself shaving my head. But I had your ashes for a while, and your dad and I split up at the end of the year, which I think would have happened whether you had lived or not. I haven't really been okay since you passed away, and this has been the first year that I've been trying to actively make a concerted effort to deal with my grief around you passing. When your dad and I split up, I moved to San Francisco and I spread some of your ashes in Big Sur, California, which is my very favorite place in the United States. I mailed your ashes back to your dad, and in one of many fights we've gotten into, the final one, he let me know that he buried your ashes somewhere that I will never know where they are. And I'm sorry for that. I don't know where to visit you. Other than Big Sur, I can see you in Big Sur. Um, I'm not really sure what else to say. I wanted to just tell your story. I've been trying to say this story for 7 years and get it out of my chest. Um, I feel incredibly guilty for, for what happened. Many people have argued with me that these things just happen. Your dad was very convinced and wanted to let me know that something I did when I was younger somehow caused my inability to carry you. He really enjoyed hurting me, but he's also very hurt. So I try to not hold it against him. I have an incredible amount of guilt of what happened. And I'm very grateful for nearly 9 months that I got with you. Well, plus, me carrying you for the short amount of time. Um, Getting to be your mother was an incredible gift that I will always cherish. And I did my best. And I hope you don't hate me. Sorry. Did you stop it? Oh. Uh, I don't know where you are. That came up in therapy the other day. Like literally, I don't know where your ashes are. But I also don't know where you are in the universe. And I hope you're seeing some really cool shit. I hope I get to see you again. um, I do want to tell you that, one of the coolest things that came out of all of this was that nothing else can ever hurt me. Like, I have this incredible lack of fear that I don't think I had before I met you. Because losing you was the worst thing that could have ever happened to me. And anything else that comes my way, it will pale in comparison to that. And despite my best effort in taking myself out the next year, uh, I'm still here and I don't really understand why. But what people have told me and what I would like to believe is that you are around and that you're watching. Uh, by the time I'm posting this, it's the 31st, which means it's been 7 years since you've been gone. And part of me is really scared to let go of everything I'm holding on to around you because it's all I have left. Uh, but I'm also really tired of being really sad all the time. And I hope you understand that. I really really love you, Harrison. And I think about you all the time. Happy Halloween. I think I'm done.